Hey everyone, so because of this wonderful thread on the Unity forums, I had a great idea and I want to give a big shout out to Fuzzy Slippers. Fuzzy Slippers, you gave me an idea for how to do these inventories, where inventories are all the things that a player in any game may obtain, may hold, may collect, such as skills, which is something they might learn, items, things they could collect, spells that they would learn that they could use in different ways. All of these dispositions, these are just they're good, neutral, and evil for my game. And conditions, like if they are poisoned, that's a condition they'll, have in their conditions inventory. All this category, all the inventories are going to be copied onto the players in the game itself. So every player will have a, a list of skills, a list of items, a list of spells, dispositions, and conditions, etc. And like poisoned, um, it will have a value or whatnot or something in the game. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but this way of setting it up is really cool. And I was working on redoing this scene for creating a character creation scene. I was thinking, you know what? I wonder if I could make that even cooler by extending it to the non-inventory items too. So if you look at this, you'll see I've got main data here and main data here. Ignore everything right here. Ignore these. These are what I had before, 32 classes and all that. 32 classes right there and all that. That's what I had before. I have a new thing here, and it's similar to the inventories, but instead of inventories, I'm calling them what do I call them? Data, just data, I think, right? Yeah, just data. It's the same setup as the inventory, but data is things that won't be collected by the player. They're rather things that just data that are static, that you won't change throughout the game, that don't change throughout the game, but your code may refer back to. I also changed the main name to master and master data editor. So when you want to call something, as I've been doing, ignore my code for now. As I've been doing, you'll call something like master data, data ID, items, etc. So master.data would be the dot notation for so many different things. And the way this works now is you can add your own categories. So I've added these categories already. What I was working on is the default names here. So I have a default name, Andrew, that's my name. Gender, you can choose for male and female. Now that's kind of cool because when you add a new category, just adding it right here, you can have as many items in that category as you want. You can have as many items in that category as you want, and each item will have custom variables. Now the variables can be a float, an int, a boolean, a string. I'll probably add things like texture 2Ds and game objects to this list eventually as well. But it can also be any one of these. Now if you'll notice, these are, I need to make these are all the data lists. So it can also be any number one of the data lists. Now I want to make sure that I don't do test because that could cause an infinite loop of sorts. Although I don't think it would. So you could choose that. But for now, you can choose anything you want. So if I choose gender, like I did with the default names, and add that as a custom variable, you can also delete it. Close that. Whenever I have a new item, so I'll just call this item, that's going to have a name. Everything has a name. And then I can change that test item. Let's try this again. Test item. There you go. So you can change the name, of course, and then now I can choose the gender is either going to be male or female. Now this isn't storing the entire data object. All it's doing is storing an integer. So here we have test, our items, one item, test item, data lists is where this is being held. One data list, it's going to be named gender and the value of 0, which happens to be male. So it's just gonna refer back to that based on the value. This is the ID of the item inside the genders. Now I am gonna have to do some check to make sure that if I delete one of the genders and so now the ID is actually only is say the ID was 4 before, but now there's only 2 items in the genders list, then this will return a array out of list or whatever, an error. And so I need to do a check to make sure that when I delete an item from any of these data lists, it goes through the whole structure and adjusts the gender so that adjust the value down to 0 and gives a warning here, or if there is no more, removes it. I'll have to figure that out, but somehow I'll give a warning probably in the console and adjust these to 0 so it won't throw an error, or maybe deletes it if it altogether, so it won't throw an error. And so in more practical uses, let me just delete that test. I need a delete button, but I don't have that yet. In more practical use here, we've got my default names. The old default names had the name, a race, and the gender. And so the new default names has to have the same stuff. So right now I've got the name and a gender. What I'm going to do is add a new type of custom variable of the type races. And if you notice, when you've got the integer here, you can have a list of integers that's a variable of integer. When you can name it, for these you can't name it. It's going to be races. So I'm going to add that. And now I've got my list of races. Now there are no races to choose from, so I'm just going to go up here and choose human, elf, half orc, and dwarf. And now I've got my list right here, so I can choose that Andrew is the name of a male elf, or a male half orc. And that way later when I call a choose a random name, I'll go through the list and choose a random name if it's the right gender and the right race, and there you go. I'll be able to call this with up in the function. Let me see how I would do that. It would be so master.data, and then the data ID. In which case I think this one would be 7, or whatnot. But I would probably go for master.data. I think it's just master, right? Where did I put this? Yeah. So master.data ID. Where is it? Master.data ID, and we'll call that the ID of the races. So that'll send me, data ID of default names. Whoops. Default, that's a string, default names. And that will return the ID number of default names, which will be 7. So master data default names dot items, and it might be in a loop that I'm going through or something. Items I dot data lists, and again we'll go for master.data ID. We'll have to figure out what you get the idea. There will be something here, data ID, put a number in there, dot value, because if you look at the data list, there's just name and value. So you're going to do, this is going to be a search by the name, and then you're going to get the value, and then you've got 0 or 1 or whatnot for 0, 1, 2, 3 for the gender, and then you'll refer back to the gender to get the name of the gender, and you can display that, or the race and gender, and you can display that up here in your buttons. Does that make any sense? It makes sense in my head for the most part, so hopefully it makes sense. I just finished writing that code, so I need to play with it more to make sure it's working as I expect, but I think it is, in which case this is actually going to be some pretty slick code. And at first it was just going to be a first-person RPG game data editor, and now it's just going to be a game data editor, because this is not going to be at all limited to a first-person RPG. So that's kind of cool, I think. So thank you, Fuzzy Slippers, for some ideas.